Hello guys, welcome back. In this lecture, we will learn how to create a table using primary key. Okay, I mean when we create a table, how we can create in a way so that it can have a primary key. And we will also discuss about the primary key constraint. So let's start with the primary key constraint first. So the primary key constraint allows you to define the primary key of a table. Now next you need to know that what is the primary key. So a primary key is a column or group of columns. Okay, why group of columns? That sometimes it is not necessary that a single column is capable enough for defining a row uniquely. So in that case you need to form your primary key using multiple columns. Okay, so a primary key is a column or group of columns that uniquely identifies rows in a table, and table can have one and only one primary key. Okay, however, there can be more than one columns or group of columns that can uniquely identify a row, and all such keys known as candidate key, and a primary key is also a candidate key. Okay, and now let's have a look at how we can define a primary key into a table. In this lecture we will create a new table with primary key in it, and in some other lecture we will learn how to add a primary key in an existing table. Okay, and here on my screen you can see the syntax of creating a table with primary key. Okay, and here you can see that the syntax is very similar to creating a table without primary key. Here I used id serial primary key. Okay, and what is serial here? Okay, you might think that why I defined serial here rather than integer type or float type or some other data type. So serial is a kind of data type, let's say integer data type. Okay, and it define a column of the table as an auto increment column, create a sequence object and assign the next value generated by the sequence as a default value to a column. Okay, since we are using this for the id attributes, so whenever you create a new record or insert a new row in the table, then id is assigned automatically. For example, if there is no row in the table already, and when you insert your first row, then id will be assigned as 1. Okay, and when you insert the second row, then id will be assigned at 2, and so on. Okay, so depending upon how many records there is already in the table, okay, the next record will have the id next value of the existing id value. Okay, and you don't need to provide value for attribute defined as the serial. Okay, it will automatically capture that how many uh, records are already there. Okay, so enough talking, and let's create the table with primary keys practically. Okay, so to create the primary key, first switch to the terminal. Okay, so let's open the sudo hyphen u postgres and then psql password 123. Okay, now what we need to do, that we will create a new table, and you can name your table as whatever you want, but I am creating a table with name employees. Okay, and the employees table will have attribute like id, employee code, name, email, city, and salary. Okay, so what we can do here, create table. Okay, I hope you remember that we use create table command to create a table into the database. So create table, and then you need to provide the table name, so employees. Okay, and then we need to define our attributes here. Okay, so what we can define, id as serial and define it as primary key. Okay, so we need to mention here the primary key. So whenever we mention primary key along with a column, then the column will be inserted as the primary key. So primary key. Okay, now we need to provide our next value as, let's say, employee code, and it should be, let's say, varchar 50, varchar 50, and then let's define name, let's say varchar 100. Okay, and then define other attribute like email, city, and salary. So email, we can provide varchar 255. Okay, and then city, varchar, let's say, 100. Okay, and then salary, and salary you need to define as float. Okay, however you choose integer as well if you wish, but I am choosing float here because sometimes when salary gets calculated, it result might be in float. Okay, so now here you can see that we write the command to create the employees table, that create table employees and then attribute names like id as serial, and id is the primary key here. Employee code, that is varchar 50, so it's varchar 50 is the length of the employee code, and same as name, email, city, and salary as float. Okay, now run this query, and here you can see that it generate the create table. Okay, and you can see the output of this table is like, let's say def slash d and table name, so employees. Okay, and just run this command. So here you can see that these are the columns, like id, employee code, city, salary, and so on. And here you can see the types of the column associated with it, like integer, character varying 50, character varying 100 for name, character varying 255 for email, character varying 100 for city, and double precision for salary. And here you can see that this nullable column showing the not null to the id attribute. Why? Because we defined id as the primary key. Okay, and a primary key cannot be null, and it must be unique. So here you can see not nullable and not null. And what is the default? So default, you can see that next value employee id sequence and then rec class. Okay, so what does it mean? That whenever you insert a new record, the id will be calculated based upon what is the id of the previous record. Okay, for example, if there is no records in the employees table so far, so whenever you create a new employee record, the id will be 1. And whenever, and let's say today you created 10 records and tomorrow you will creating another employee, then the id will be calculated as 11. Okay, so here you can see that we created our employee table with primary key. Now let's insert some rows into employees table. So we need to use insert command to insert rows into the table. Okay, so we can use insert into. Okay, and insert into, and here we need to provide the table name and then column names here. And as I said previously that with id is the serial now and the primary key, so we do not need to provide id value here, it will be calculated automatically. Okay, so now what we can do here, employee code, name, email, city, and then salary. Okay, and here we need to provide values. So you can provide values like, let's say employee code emp001, and then let's provide some name here, let's say whatever name you can choose, let's say Abhishek Jain. Okay, and then city, email, like let's say abhishek at the rate example.com. And then city, let's say Indore. And then let's say salary, so we can use salary as 00, sorry, 00. Okay, and now add the semicolon here and run this query. So whenever you run this query, it will create a new employee, or it will new record, or it will insert a new row into the employees table. Okay, and when you run this query, you can see that insert 0 1. Okay, so what is 0? 0 is the oid object id, and 1 is like what or how many commands we inserted into the table with our last insert query. So it's showing 0 1. Okay, and now you can verify this entry by running select command. So select star from employees, and here you can see that id is 1 now. Why? Because we added it as a serial integer. Okay, that means it is now stored as a auto incremented way. So here you can see that id 1, employee code is emp 0001, name Abhishek Jain, email abhishek at the rate example.com, city Indore, and salary 25,000. Okay, now let's insert another employee so that we can verify that id is getting auto incremented. Okay, so here now let's insert another employee. So here we can say emp 0002, and let's change the name as well. So here we can use, let's say, Ravi Singh. And here we can use Ravi at the rate example.com, or R Singh at the rate example.com, and change the city. Let's say city is Nimach. Okay, and now let's change my salary. Let's make it 35. I'm getting more than Abhishek. So now let's run this query again. And when you run this query is also get inserted into the database. And when you run select star from employees, you will see that now we have two records in employee table, and their ID is 1 and 2. Okay. And here you can clearly see that we did not provided value for id attribute in both insert queries, and we are getting 1 and 2 as the id. That's why we can say that serial is worked as a auto incremented attribute. Okay, and now we have the primary keys value for or our id attribute. And that's it. So in this lecture we learn what is primary key constraint and how to create a table with primary key in Postgres. We also saw that what is serial property and how it works. In the next lecture we will take a look on another constraint that is unique and not null, and how to use them. Meanwhile, try this lecture at your end, and we will meet into the next lecture. Till then, tata, goodbye, take care, and stay safe.